Hello there, I'm Alistair Ben and you're watching Expressive Photography. In this week's video, I want to talk about aspect ratio and how you can use them to change dramatically the way that your images look, feel, and will appear to not just you, but your viewers as well. The entire experience of being in the landscape is about being somewhere, seeing something that you think is worth pointing your camera at, and somehow eliminating everything else so that only that clear thing is available. One of the things with big grand landscapes of pointy mountains and dramatic light is that they rely on drama. And quite often these conditions aren't present in the landscape, and we find ourselves making photographs of landscapes that just don't get across that amazing feeling that we might experience ourselves. Some of you who have been regular viewers to this channel will appreciate that I haven't been posting for quite a long time now. The long and the short of it is I needed a break. The demands of producing weekly YouTube videos are such that when you're going to be away running workshops, it is a huge demand. So an apology to my regular viewers, but I do hope that moving forward, when I do decide to post a video, it's because I have something to say that I hope you will find useful for your own photography and your own photographic development. So, aspect ratios, what's it all about? Why should you be thinking about it perhaps deeper than the superficial? I've just returned, we're now into the beginning of March. In January, I was in Morocco for over 3 weeks, leading a couple of workshops into the Sahara Desert. And then in February, I was running a workshop on the Isle of Skye and the Outer Hebrides. So I've had about 40 days or 30 days in the field so far this year. And I've been really quite excited by the photography that I've been making, purely because I've released some bandwidth of only making photographs for content. Now I'm much more interested in making photographs to illustrate perhaps how I see the landscape to clients, but also for my own pleasure. What we're going to look at first here is some panoramic images that I made in Morocco. Panoramic images have been around for a long time. The the Hasselblad X-Pan film format has been around for a long time. And this aspect ratio of 65 by 24, I had to think about that for a second, so nearly 3:1, is really useful to make a landscape feel very, very expansive. If we just click on this first one, you will see that this is a 65 by 24. It makes the landscape look huge and majestic. And it doesn't really matter whether we're looking at big wide scenes or something more intimate like this, it feels expansive. And I think that's the really key point with a panoramic aspect ratio. It feels majestic. Images like this I make for my own amusement. You might think I'm insane, but that's okay. I think it's a really cool way to subdivide space. You're forcing the viewer to go from left to right or right to left. You're not giving them a lot of opportunity to travel upwards. And when we start looking at squares or some of the other aspect ratios, you will see quite clearly that it's that relationship between the across and the up that is going to guide the viewer. Perhaps one of the great things about photography is our opportunity to show personal preference, personal expression, and to make images that we want to make. That is important, but it's equally about showing viewers why we pointed our cameras at certain things and why perhaps they should be interested in those things too. As soon as we condense a landscape into this panoramic aspect ratio, we're eliminating content. This is about half of my full frame. These are about 50 megapixels out of the 100 odd that I have on the GFX. And below that, there was just farmers' fields. Quite a kind of an agricultural landscape, but I didn't feel it was adding anything to the story that I wanted to get across. Above there was also some quite busy rocks, beautiful rocks, yes, but I felt that they were adding more than I wanted to show in this particular scene. So by making this scene very compact, very condensed, and just cropping it down to this panoramic aspect ratio, I feel I'm able to include everything I want to be there and eliminating everything I don't want to include. And this is what aspect ratios do. If you're shooting with a regular mirrorless or a digital SLR camera, you tend to be shooting at a 3:2 aspect ratio, or some of them have 4/3 aspect ratios. The Fuji GFX 100 Mark II has a 4:3 sensor. And if I were to shoot full frame, I would always be quite often including things that I don't want to include. The landscape doesn't work on a 3:2 aspect ratio by default. There's nothing that says we have to shoot with a standardized aspect ratio. Many of us these days use cameras that can shoot various aspect ratios at the time of capture, and this is my default process. One of the reasons I use the GFX is because it has a variety of different aspect ratios that I can use to eliminate things at the time of being in the field. If your camera doesn't do this, you should have what you want to eliminate in the front of your mind. I think don't stop taking photographs, but as soon as you get them into processing, realize that the bit that you want and start to think about, is it adding or subtracting from your intent? One thing for sure is I really enjoyed shooting with this X-Pan. These are all RAW files, by the way. I enjoyed shooting with this X-Pan pano format in Morocco. I just felt I was able to create images that still had an expansive, majestic feel, even though many of them are really quite intimate. This is one of my favorites. And again, don't be afraid of using shadows. Don't be afraid of starting to show less. I like this one quite a lot. You might not, and that's fine, because I like it and I made it for me. So understanding that we can be bold with our processing as well. Be bold with what you don't show. So what should be very, very obvious straight from the off-go here is that as soon as we start looking at square aspect ratios, the vibe changes. That feeling of expansiveness and majesty and grandeur will disappear. As soon as you start looking at something that's in a square aspect ratio, it is going to feel grounded. It is going to feel as if it just sits in the frame and you are neither favoring width or height. And that means that you go up and across at the same time. And anything you put in a square is going to feel like it just sits there. You don't ever get that expansive, majestic, grandiose feel. For example, this one here, huge landscape, but it feels very contained. It doesn't feel majestic. It feels graphical, perhaps, or it feels quite abstract maybe, but it doesn't give you that sense of a massive landscape. Here's a good case in point. This is a big landscape photograph. It's showing dune after dune after dune receding into the distance, but it doesn't feel like a big landscape. Compare that to those panoramic images I was sharing with you, and you definitely got that sense of majesty, even in a small scene, expansiveness. So it should be very clear that how we use aspect ratios is a key component of expressive photography, or how we express our photography. This one slipped through the net. I think this is actually 4:3. This is full frame. If I were to crop this down to a square, it will lose that sense of wanting to stretch its shoulders. It feels like it's wanting to push out to the edges of the frame. And the content, these, the wind blowing the sand off the ridge there, that bit has got somewhere to go. There's that feeling of movement. There's a little bit feeling of space in this. It doesn't feel as contained. It doesn't feel as static. All of this expressive language, ways of describing your work, ways of engaging with your own work is the surest way for you to make your photographs more expressive. Ways for you to express yourself better. You have to appreciate that using aspect ratios is a fundamental tool in expressing a variety of opinions and a variety of perspectives. Whenever we discuss aspect ratios, there is always going to be the discussion around cropping for content. By that, I mean not using a standardized aspect ratio, but basically moving the edges around to feel as if it's containing the image the way you want it, getting rid of distractions and so forth. That is all well and good, and if you want to do that, that is fine. You will notice from my own work, I don't. I tend to favor standardized aspect ratios, typically squares, 4x5, 65x24, 16x9, and less 4x3, 3x2, that type of thing. And the reason I do that, and if we go to this, which is the gallery of images I want to present from Scotland, I have a selection of Xpan panel format images and squares, and they look pretty good on the screen together. I can present them as a body of work and it feels coherent. It feels like it's coming from the same person. It feels as if they belong together. And I think if you're going to present your work either on a website, or if you want to make a book, or you're going to do some kind of online presentation, sticking with a format that people can recognize and feel comfortable with is probably better than just showing all kinds of random things. There's a couple of images I want to share, and again, these are just raw files. They haven't had any processing at all. This is literally straight out of camera. This is an intimate scene of some frozen water along the edge of a river in a very, very famous Scottish landscape location, but you wouldn't know where you are, and I love that about it. It's very anonymous, and it's finding beauty in the details. It's finding beauty in the things that aren't obvious. And I think that is a beautiful way to engage with the landscape, to appreciate that it's so much bigger than we truly appreciate. It's very easy to drive up to the parking lot and see a beautiful view that everybody sees when they drive down the road and point your camera at it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you get great light or auroras or Milky Ways or gorgeous sunset or sunrise light and gorgeous clouds, great. Your photos will appeal to everybody or most people. I have my beautiful light reflected in this water or refracted off this ice here. And this to me is a far more beautiful way of engaging with the landscape. But because I'm using this 65x24 aspect ratio, it feels different from how it would be if it was a square or a 4x5. I'm making it feel expansive. Photographing the refraction bokeh through ice crystals on trees. You're not photographing anything in particular, but it still feels open. It feels expansive. And just photographing the bokeh here, I got into this. This was on day one of the Scotland workshop. And it doesn't matter what you point your camera at. If you crop it down and get rid of recognizable geographical features like pointy mountains or famous places or famous views, and you just zone in on some of those key parts, you will always produce photographs that people think, oh, I wonder where that is, whereas most people know where this is. As soon as we take it down to a square, this is the same piece of ice we looked at in the Pano version. By putting this into a square, we're suddenly containing it in a very, very different way. This is all about detail. This is all about intimacy. Just comparing this image with the panoramic version of the same scene, we can instantly feel the difference between a square and a panoramic photograph. Maybe when you finish watching this video, you might want to go into your own catalogs and start cropping some of your photographs. Take one photograph and crop it in different ways and see how it changes. Make squares, make vertical 4x5s, make horizontal 4x5s, make horizontal 16x9s. Dare to dream and make vertical 16x9s. Try all these different aspect ratios with one photograph and you will instantly see the impact that cropping and aspect ratios will have on your work. I think we'll call it a day for that for now. Thank you very much if you've got this far. I would really encourage you to click on the link below and subscribe to our newsletter. That is my primary output these days. I'm very rarely on social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. I'm only going to be posting videos here when I want to or when I feel I have something to add or to share. So the newsletter, I try and get one out every couple of weeks with news, some ideas, some thoughts that I'm pondering with my own development. And that has proven to be a really nice thing over the last few months since I've dropped off YouTube. So click on the link below, subscribe to our newsletter, and thank you for that. On the website, of course, there is still copies of Out of Darkness available. So that would be fantastic if you would like to support our work through that, or of course, some of my ebooks and so forth. Apart from that, we're all good. I'm off to run another workshop next week in Spain, and I'm really looking forward to that, particularly if you're joining me. But yeah, I hope you found this little rant about aspect ratios and cropping to be of value, and I do hope that you can find that is going to help you in your own photography. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. I don't know when I'll be posting again, but I do look forward to it at some point in time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.